I'm Jamie. I'm glad to be back today, and today I plan to read you two stories. The first is called King Hugo's Huge Ego, and this one was written by Chris Van Duzen. Long ago, when people spoke with words like thou and thee, there lived a king named Hugo, who was only 3'3". And though his mini monarch stood no higher than an elf, his ego was enormous. He thought highly of himself. Yes, Hugo was a cocky king, as boastful as can be. To him, no other person was as wonderful as he. He made his subjects bow to him whenever he was nigh. It pleased him to look down on them each time that he went by. And every Friday morning, at precisely 10:30, his guards called all the people to the tower base. And then King Hugo cleared his throat and gave his captive congregation a lengthy talk he liked to call the speech of adoration. For hours, these poor villagers endured the boring buzz of how mighty and magnificent King Hugo thought he was. One day, King Hugo climbed aboard his coach of gleaming gold to watch the peasants bow to him as down the road he rolled. But when he turned a corner by a field of amber hay, a maiden with a heavy load was blocking up the way. The heralds blew their trumpets, then called out to the lass, "Step aside and bow your head. Allow the king to pass." The girl, whose name was Tessa, said bluntly, "Go around." She didn't want to drop her load and bow down on the ground. The king began to rant and rave and spout and spit and sputter. "Roll on," he barked. And then they bumped poor Tessa to the gutter. She landed in a rivulet. Oh, what a muddy mess. But little did King Hugo know she was a sorceress. The king with special powers, like a wizard or a witch, so she cast a spell upon the king, which mired in the ditch. "A pox on you, O cocky king, in robes of ruby red. Let's see if all your arrogance can fit inside your head." The next day, when the king awoke, he climbed down from his bed and gazed into his looking-glass. Admiringly, he said, "I do believe, dear Hugo, you're more handsome than last night." But when he put his crown back on, it felt a little tight. He donned his crimson robe, the one with ermine fringe. "How grand I am," the king exclaimed, and felt a little twinge. His crown seemed even tighter now, yet Hugo didn't care. He hollered from his window to the people in the square, "Say, who's the most majestic king? 'Tis I, you must admit." But when he pulled his head back in, it almost didn't fit. Every time he claimed to be the greatest of the land, the king perceived a tingle and felt his head expand. But he continued bragging in his overstated way, and so his head kept bloating, bulging bigger every day. By Friday, Hugo's head was huge, but still he didn't know that his self-directed compliments had caused his head to grow. His speech of adoration was scheduled as before, but when he reached the tower, he could not fit through the door. He marched across the courtyard to climb the open stair, then called the people to the wall and gave his speech from there. "Behold, my lowly subjects, I do not doubt thine eyes, for yea, my noble noggin has increased tenfold in size. I know not how this happened, but now there's even more of your absolutely fabulous King Hugo to adore." The more he talked, the more he grew, till suddenly a squall hit the king's gigantic head and pitched him off the wall. He floated freely through the air, then landed with a thud. He bobbed and dipped and flipped and skipped and toppled through the mud. He tumbled topsy-turvy as he bounced along the lane and ended up by Tessa, who was busy stacking grain. King Hugo's head was spinning. He felt dizzy, dazed, and beat. But when he noticed Tessa, he yelled, "Get me to my feet!" Tessa wandered over. "Unbelievable," she sighed. "Did you ever stop to wonder why your head is 10 feet wide? It's your ego. It's annoying. So I cast a little spell. And every pompous thing you said has caused your head to swell." "That's ludicrous, ridiculous, preposterous, insane. I'm humbler than anyone," the king snapped in disdain. "I'll prove it to you," she replied. "You've been this way for years. Just listen," ordered Tessa. Then she grabbed and tweaked his ears. Suddenly a blast of air exploded from his head, along with all the haughty things King Hugo had ever said. "Bow down, praise me, I'm so magnificent." King Hugo's head deflated like a giant pink balloon, and when he heard what he had said, he felt like a buffoon. Sheepishly, he said to her, "I do apologize." Then he looked at Tessa with big, sad puppy eyes. Their glances met, and instantly she felt her heart go zing. Could it be deep down inside she kind of liked the king? The king got up. He took her hand and bent down on his knee. He gazed at her with tenderness, then spoke most humbly. "Your spell has opened up my eyes. I've been unkind and rude. Please stay with me and teach me how to change my attitude." What happened next was kismet, yet truly unforeseen. He became a better man, and she became a queen. They ruled the kingdom kindly, in a fair and friendly way, and everyone lived happily forever and a day. The end. So Tessa taught the king how to be a little humble. I have one other book I'd like to read today. This one is called The Mango Monster, and it's written by Derek Mascarenhas and Monika Repka. This one's a little longer. Marianne's dad sniffed the air. "I think the mangoes will be ready tomorrow." "Finally," said Marianne. She had been waiting all year for mango season. "What are you going to do with so many mangoes?" "Eat them all," Marianne said. And her father laughed and shut off the light. Marianne could smell the sweet, ripe mangoes as soon as she woke up. She rushed outside, looking forward to her first juicy bite. Her dad was leaving for work, and her Aunt Irene and cousin Zoe had just arrived. "Are your mangoes ready?" Zoe asked. "Yes, but look," said Marianne. "The lower branches are all picked over." "It could be a mango monster," said Marianne's neighbor, Mr. Cruz. "A monster?" said Marianne. "A mango monster," said Mr. Cruz. "They've been stealing from the mango trees since before I was born." "I don't like monsters," said Zoe. "Neither do I," said Marianne. "But it's eating our mangoes. Maybe we can catch it." "Sprinkle some ash around the tree, and you'll be able to see any footprints it leaves behind," suggested Mr. Cruz. Marianne and Zoe collected ash from the fire pit and spread it around the tree. Then they grabbed some mangoes and hurried in for breakfast. "What do you think the mango monster looks like?" Marianne asked, scraping the sweet, juicy mango from the seed. "I think it's big and purple," said Zoe, wicking mango juice from her fingers. "With long, sharp claws so it can climb trees," said Marianne. "And an orange tongue from all the mangoes it eats," added Zoe. They finished, and their mangoes and eggs boiled as quickly as they could and rushed back to the tree. "Look, footprints," said Marianne. "Monster footprints?" Zoe asked. Marianne took a closer look. "I don't think so. They're too small. It must have been the pigs." "Maybe the mango monster is a pig," said Zoe. "No," said Marianne. "Pigs just eat the mangoes that fall off to the ground, not the ones in the branches. And pigs aren't purple," added Zoe. "Try tying balls to the branches," suggested Auntie Irene. "You'll hear them ring if the monster comes back." So Marianne and Zoe found some bells and spent the morning hanging them on the tree. They were eating lunch when they heard ringing. "The mango monster is a squirrel," shouted Zoe. "Even a hungry squirrel is too small to eat so many mangoes," said Marianne. "Right," agreed Zoe. "And they don't have long claws. Maybe we need something bigger than bells." "Great idea," said Marianne. They snuck the 2 largest pots from the kitchen. Then they balanced them high in the tree just before the hottest part of the afternoon when everyone took a nap. Clang, clang! The girls were woken by the 2 loud clangs. "It's the monster!" cried Zoe. "No, just monkeys scared away by the pots," said Marianne. "They make so much noise on their own. We would have heard them if they had stolen mangoes last night. And they don't have orange tongues," added Zoe. Marianne and Zoe were stumped. There were so many animals eating mangoes. Maybe there was no monster after all. Then Marianne noticed something purple caught in the bark of the tree. "What's that?" she asked. "It's the fur of the mango monster," yelled Zoe. "That means there really is a monster," said Marianne. "Tonight, let's set all 3 traps. Then we'll be sure to catch it." Marianne and Zoe arranged to have a sleepover. Before bed, they sprinkled more ash around the mango tree, tied bells to the branches, and even filled the pots with water before balancing them in the tree. Crash, clatter! Early the next morning, Marianne and Zoe woke up to a crash, a yell, and a clatter of bells. They rushed outside, ready to catch the mango monster in the act. "Dad," said Marianne. "The mango monster was you all along," said Zoe. "Mango monster?" asked Dad. "We were trying to catch whoever was stealing the mangoes," said Marianne. "I gave some mangoes to Mr. Cruz and our other neighbors," explained Dad, "and I dropped some off at the food bank on my way to work yesterday. The mango tree gives and gives, so it's important for us to give too." Marianne looked at all the fruit still left on the tree, and that's when she came up with a plan. The girls go to work, and by the time Marianne's dad got home, they were ready. "Look what we made," Zoe said, "and look how many mangoes we collected." "Share," said Marianne. "Fantastic," Dad said. "Now we have 2 mango monsters." Zoe peeked behind her and giggled. "Make that 3. Look at that. There really was a mango monster. Well, I hope you enjoyed those books. See you again next time.
Hi, boys and girls. I'm Jo Toll, and I'm here to read you 3 books today. The first book I'm going to read is called The Wreck of the Zephyr by Chris Van Allsburg, also illustrated by Chris Van Allsburg. So here we go. The Wreck of the Zephyr. Once, while traveling along the seashore, I stopped at a small fishing village. After eating lunch, I decided to take a walk. I followed a path out of the village uphill to some cliffs high above the sea. At the edge of those cliffs was a most unusual sight, the wreck of a small sailboat. An old man was sitting among the broken timbers smoking a pipe. He seemed to be reading my mind when he said, "Odd, isn't it?" "Yes," I answered. "How did it get here?" "Waves carried it up during a storm." "Really?" I said. "It doesn't seem the waves could ever get that high." The old man smiled. "Well, there is another story." He invited me to have a seat and listen to his strange tale. "In our village years ago," he said, "there was a boy who could sail a boat better than any man in the harbor. He could find a breeze over the flattest sea. When dark clouds kept other boats at anchor, the boy could sail out ready to prove to the villagers, to the sea itself, how great a sailor he was. One morning, under an ominous sky, he prepared to take his boat, the Zephyr, out to sea. A fisherman warned the boy to stay in port. Already a strong wind was blowing. "I'm not afraid," the boy said, "because I'm the greatest sailor there is." The fisherman pointed to a seagull gliding overhead. There's the only sailor who can go out on a day like this." The boy just laughed as he hoisted his sails into a blustery wind. The wind whistled in the rigging as the Zephyr pounded her way through the water. The sky grew black, and the waves rose up like mountains. The boy struggled to keep his boat from going over. Suddenly, a gust of wind caught the sail. The boom swung around and hit the boy's head. He fell to the cockpit floor and did not move. Oh no, I hope he was okay. When the boy opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a beach. The Zephyr rested behind him, carried there by the storm. The boy was far from the water's edge. The tide would not carry it back to sea. The boy set out to look for help. He walked for a long time and was surprised that he didn't recognize the shoreline. He climbed a hill expecting to see something familiar, but what he saw instead was a strange and unbelievable sight. Before him were two boats sailing high above the water. Astonished, he watched them glide by. Then a third sailed past, towing the Zephyr. The boats entered a bay that was bordered by a large village. There they left the Zephyr. These pages are hard to turn. The boy made his way down to the harbor to the dock where the boat was tied. He met a sailor who smiled when he saw the boy. Pointing to the Zephyr, he asked, "Yours?" The boy nodded. The sailor said they almost never saw strangers on their island. It was surrounded by a treacherous reef. The Zephyr must have been carried over the reef by the storm. He told the boy that later they would take him and the Zephyr back over the reef. But the boy said he would not leave until he learned to sail above the waves. The sailor told him it took years to learn to sail like that. Besides, he said, the Zephyr does not have the right sails. The boy insisted. He pleaded with the sailor. Finally, the sailor said he would try to teach him if the boy promised to leave the next morning. The boy agreed. The sailor went to a shed and got a new set of sails. All afternoon they sailed back and forth across the bay. Sometimes the sailor took the tiller and the boat would magically begin to lift out of the water. But when the boy tried, he could not catch the wind that made boats fly. When the sun went down, they went back to the harbor. They dropped anchor and the fishermen rowed them to shore. In the morning, the sailor said, "We'll put your own sails back on the Zephyr and send you home." He took the boy to his house, and the sailor's wife fed him oyster stew. After dinner, the sailor played the concertina. He sang a song about a man named Samuel Blue, who long ago tried to sail his boat over land and crashed. "For the wind o'er the land, ne'er steady nor true, and all men that sail there meet Samuel Blue." I'm not much of a singer. When he was done with the song, the sailor sent the boy to bed, but the boy could not sleep. He knew he could fly his boat if he had another chance. He waited until the sailor and his wife were asleep. Then he quietly dressed and went to the harbor. As he rowed out to the Zephyr, the boy felt the light evening wind grow stronger and colder. Under a full moon, he sailed the Zephyr into the bay. He tried to remember everything the sailor had told him. He tried to feel the wind pulling his boat forward, lifting it up. Then suddenly the boy felt the Zephyr begin to shake. The sound of water rushing past the hull grew louder. The air filled with spray as the boat sliced through the waves. The boy slowly began to lift. Higher and higher the Zephyr rose out of the water, then finally broke free. The sound of rushing water stopped. There was only the sound of the wind in the sails. The Zephyr was flying. Using the stars to guide him, the boy set a course for home. The wind blew very hard, churning the sea below, but that did not matter to the Zephyr as she was gliding through the night sky. When clouds blocked the boy's view of the stars, he trimmed the sails and climbed higher. Surely the men of the island never dared fly so high. Now the boy was certain he was truly the greatest sailor of all. He steered well. Before the night was over, he saw the moonlit spire of the church at the edge of his village. As he drew closer to land, an idea took hold of him. He would sail over the village and ring the Zephyr's bell. Then everyone would see him and know that he was the greatest sailor. He flew over the treetop cliffs of the shore, but as he reached the church, the Zephyr began to fall. The wind had shifted. The boy pulled as hard as he could on the tiller, but it did no good. The wind shifted again. He steered for the open sea, but the trees at the cliff's edge stood between him and the water. At first, it was just a rustle of leaves brushing the hull. Then the air was filled with the sound of breaking branches and ripping sails. The boat fell to the ground, and here she sits today. A remarkable tale, I said, as the old man stopped to relight his pipe. What happened to the boy? He broke his leg that night. Of course, no one believed his story about flying boats. It was easier for them to believe that he was lost in the storm and thrown up there by the waves, the old man laughed. No, sir, the boy never amounted to much. People thought he was crazy. He just took odd jobs around the harbor. Most of the time he was out sailing, searching for the island and a new set of sails. A light breeze blew through the trees. The old man looked up. Wind coming, he said. I've got some sailing to do. He picked up a cane, and I watched him as he limped slowly toward the harbor. The end. Well, that was a nice story about a boy who was a sailor who would fly boats in the air. That was exciting. The next book I have for you is called Someone is Eating the Sun. And it's written by Ruth Sonneborn and illustrated by Eric Gurney. Someone is eating the sun. One day, Hen was pecking around, picking up corn when it began to grow dark. That's strange, said Hen. There's not a cloud in the sky. Why is it getting darker? When she looked up, she saw something strange still. A bite-sized piece of sun was missing. Goodness gracious, cried Hen. Someone has taken a bite out of the sun. I must go tell Rooster. And off she went, feathers flying with a flippity-flap and a flutter. Rooster was standing on a fence, crowing as loud as he could. Rooster, Rooster, called Hen. Something terrible is going on. Don't bother me about it, said Rooster. Can't you see I'm practicing? If I stop to talk to everyone that comes by, I'll never be ready for tomorrow's sunrise. Well, you can stop practicing right now, said Hen. There isn't going to be a sunrise tomorrow. Look up there. Cock-a-doodle-doo, crowed Rooster. What's happening to the sun? Someone is eating it, said Hen. We must go warn Duck. And off they went, legs scurrying, feathers flying, and a flippity-flap and a flutter. Duck was swimming in the pond. Duck, Duck, said Hen. Something dreadful is going on. Don't bother me now, said Duck. Can't you see I'm busy swimming? This is the only way I can keep cool on a hot day. Well, you can stop worrying about keeping cool, said Hen. There isn't going to be a hot day. Look up there. Quack, quack, squawked Duck. What's happening to the sun? Someone is eating it, said Hen. We must go warn Pig. And off they went, wings beating, legs scurrying, feathers flying, and a flippity-flap and a flutter. Pig was lounging in the mud. "Pig, Pig," said Hen, "something horrible is going on." "Don't tell me any bad news," said Pig. "Can't you see I'm trying to calm my nerves? Nothing is better for your nerves than lounging in mud when the sun is beating down." "Well, you can stop lounging in the mud," said Hen. The sun's not beating down anymore. Look at the sky." "Eee!" squealed Pig. "What's happening to the sun?" "Someone is eating it," said Hen. "We must go warn Goat." And off they went, feet pounding, wings beating, legs scurrying, feathers flying, with a flippity-flap and a flutter. Goat was munching grass at the top of a hill. "Goat, Goat," cried Hen, "someone's eating the sun." "What do I care, as long as no one eats my grass," said Goat. "This is the best grass I've ever tasted." "You mean you don't care if there's no sun?" asked Pig. "No sun?" said Goat. "That's the silliest thing I've ever heard." "Look for yourself," said Hen. "Blah!" bleated Goat. I think I did that wrong. I think it was supposed to be blah, bleated Goat. "The sun's half gone. That's the worst thing I've ever seen. Blah, blah." I'm having trouble with pages today. As soon as Goat began to bleat, Pig began to squeal, Duck began to squawk, Rooster began to crow, and Hen began to cluck. There was a dreadful racket. "What are we going to do?" they cried. "What are we going to do?" "Why don't you keep quiet and watch the eclipse?" said a voice nearby. Everyone turned around. There was Turtle looking down at them. "Surely you don't want to miss the eclipse," said Turtle. "It doesn't happen very often, you know. Only once in a great, great while does the moon come between us and the sun. And just think, it's happening now." The animals stared at Turtle in amazement. Then everyone looked up at the sky. Just a slice of the sun was left. As they watched, the sun got darker and darker. The slice of sun grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. And that's an eclipse. There in front of the sun was a black silhouette of the moon. The moon had come exactly between the earth and the sun. All around the farm, everything was dark and still. They were standing in the shadow of the moon. Just as they were thinking that the sun was gone forever, a piece of it appeared. While they stood watching, the piece grew bigger and bigger. The sky got lighter and lighter. The moon was moving on. The sun was still there. "Hooray for the sun!" cried Goat and Pig and Duck and Rooster, jumping up and down. "Hooray for the great, big, wonderful sun!" "My goodness," said Hen, "no one ate it after all." Then off they went. Goat got back to eating his grass. Pig went back to lounging in the mud. Duck went back to swimming in the pond. Rooster went back to crowing on the fence. And Hen went back to pecking around and picking up corn with a flippity, flap, and a flutter. So nothing was eating the sun. It was an eclipse. That's interesting. I have one more book for you. It's called The Wonky Donkey, written by Craig Smith, illustrated by Katz Cowley. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey, hee-haw, and he had 3 legs. He was a wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey, hee-haw. He had 3 legs, one eye, and he liked to listen to country music. Yee-haw! He was a honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! He had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music, and he was quite tall and slim. He was a lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! He had 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim, and he smelt really, really bad. He was a stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. Boy, that's a mouthful. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! He had only 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelt really, really bad. And that morning, he'd got up early and hadn't had any coffee. He was a cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! He had only 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelt really, really bad. That morning he got up early and hadn't had any coffee, and he was always getting into mischief. He was a hanky, panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! He had only 3 legs, 1 eye. He liked to listen to country music. He was quite tall and slim. He smelt really, really bad. That morning he'd got up early for coffee and hadn't had any. He was always getting into mischief, but he was quite good looking. He was a spunky, hanky-panky, cranky, stinky, dinky, lanky, honky, tonky, winky, wonky donkey. Whew! I was walking down the road and I saw a donkey. Hee-haw! The end. Boy, that donkey had a lot of things going on with him. Well, thank you so much for joining us for Storytime. I hope you enjoyed the stories I read today, and we'll see you next time.